Good evening and welcome to a new translation capsule, a free online talk between translation and interpreting specialists and members of the Department of Translation, Interpreting and Applied Languages of the University of Vic, Central University of Catalonia. Today, we are honored to have Ana Matamala, translator and professor at the Autonomous University of Barcelona, where she leads the Transmedia Catalonia Research Group, and Vanessa Enríquez, senior lecturer at the University of Auckland and professor at our university. I would like to thank again all the people who make this event possible, and I would like to mention the organization that have a sponsor promote these activities, such as iDisc, Tech Forward, Pen Català, Eumo Editorial, Institut Ramon Llull, the Professional Association of Translators and Interpreters of Catalonia, the Association of English Teachers in Catalonia, the Spanish Association of Audiovisual Translation and Adaptation, and the Spanish Association of Conference Interpreters. And of course, to all of you who are online right now participating in this event. If you want to follow us on Twitter or on other social networks, remember that our hashtag is #ConversaTerrat. And you can also share your thoughts or questions here through the chats. And after I talk, we will pass them on to the speakers. So thank you very much. Vanessa, whenever you want, the floor is yours.
Okay, thank you very much, Paula, and welcome everyone to the second to last capsula of the year. I am a light-skinned Caucasian woman in my mid-40s. I have medium-length brown hair, brown eyes, and I'm wearing a navy blue shirt and a tweed checkered grey jacket, blazer jacket. Today, we're super excited to have with us Ana Matamala in our online conversation series. Ana is an associate professor in translation at the Universitat Autònoma de Barcelona, and of course, one of the experts in translation and media accessibility, the topic that brings us together today. Hi, Ana, how are you?
Hello, I feel very welcome, and it's really an honor to be here. And maybe I can only describe myself if you want also, Vanessa.
I was actually going to ask you as an expert
Okay.
whether that self-introduction qualifies as a practical audio description for those who don't have access to the visual images, and if you can do the same. And if I missed anything, maybe you can let us know too.
Mm-hmm. So I'm a woman in her very late 40s, almost 50s, but still late 40s, round-faced, which is a nice way to say that I'm a bit fat, with glasses. And I'm wearing one of my conference necklaces. I've got different ones that I wear when I go to conferences and presentations, and a nice greenish shirt. And I feel really honored, really glad to be here with all of you.
Very good. Thank you, Ana, for that. So, Ana, tell us a little bit about what you do and how did you get there?
Yes, I work at the UAB, the Universitat Autònoma de Barcelona, and there I lead the research group Transmedia Catalonia. Transmedia Catalonia is a research group that started in 2005. It's a recognized research group, and our focus is mainly on media accessibility, audiovisual translation and media accessibility. And to that end, we are involved in research projects, also educational projects, and also knowledge transfer activities. So that's basically, and in fact, I wanted to highlight this, that I'm here, yes, I'm Ana Matamala, but many of the things that I will be saying are part of a team, are the result of teamwork.
Of collaborative research, very good. We'll get to talk about research in a minute, but before that, perhaps for kind of setting the scene for someone who's new to the field, what's the main relationship? What is media accessibility, and how does it relate to what we do in translation and interpreting studies?
Yes, media accessibility is a term that you will all very often find next to audiovisual translation. So we talk about audiovisual translation and media accessibility. Audiovisual translation, maybe most of you are more familiar with. It relates to it's a form of translation, also an area of research in which we focus on overcoming the linguistic barriers. So we're talking about dubbing, we're talking about voiceover, we are talking about subtitling. But at a certain point, I remember, if I can go into anecdotes, maybe since this is a bit of a chat.
All right.
I remember that I went to this conference in 2004, the In So Many Words conference in London. And there many of us discovered audio description. When I say many of us, I say many of the people involved in audiovisual translation. Others were more in touch with subtitling, SDH, subtitling for the deaf and hard of hearing. And I remember also at Languages and the Media that this was beginning to be discussed. So at that point, I think at the turn of the century, we started talking about media accessibility. And basically, it refers to the different modalities, the different access services that provide access for those who cannot access a content in the original form because they cannot access the audio or because they cannot access the visuals. So we are talking about audio description, subtitling for the deaf and hard of hearing, etc. I would like to add one thing, if I may. I don't know if I'm talking too much. You stop me. I think that in 2005, we had the Media for All conference. And from then on, in Barcelona, this is a conference that's been running. And since then, I think that the term media accessibility has been used. But I have my concerns, okay? Because I know it's established, we use it. And still I wrote this book, sorry, publicity moment, audiovisual translation and accessibility. And I was thinking a lot about what term to use. And in the end, I thought, if we are talking about audiovisual translation, probably we should talk about audiovisual accessibility to put things at the same level, because media, in a way, could be more than audiovisual media, okay?
Absolutely.
So that's just some thoughts on that. And of course, the status of media accessibility, different people see it differently, but I hope that replies your question. I could talk more, but
yes, it does. I mean, it's a very broad field. So I think what you've done is actually, introduce the main accessibility modalities, as you said, in our field at least, and also about the different language modalities, because I assume that when we embed, or when we want to embed accessibility across different language modalities, then a number of factors and challenges arise, I suppose. I mean, how do you actually incorporate, for instance, the needs and the perspectives of the different users with different accessibility needs across so many different media and across so many different language modalities? I mean, that must be truly a challenge. And I suppose that universal design plays a role here, but what are your thoughts on this? How do we take the needs of the users into perspective?
Yes, I like very much the way you are phrasing the question, because you talk about user needs. You're not talking about user disabilities. And you are talking about a universal design perspective. So I think that when we talk about audiovisual access, one important thing would be to plan from the very beginning. And this is not new. This is what Pablo Romero Fresco, for instance, has been saying, talking about accessible filmmaking. But we can also refer to the works of Udo and Fels in audio description a long time ago, who also referred to this. So one thing would be an ideal situation would be to plan this, to integrate this from the start. And then, of course, there are different services that we can consider. We can include audio description, in which we translate the images into words. Okay.
Very good.
We can include audio subtitling, which is maybe a less known modality. Maybe I can explain that one. I don't know about our audience. Yes.
I think it's best here.
Yeah, so an audio subtitling is, I'll put an example because I think it's clearer. Imagine you live in Sweden. In Sweden, everything is subtitled in Swedish, and there is a film in Japanese and you don't speak Japanese. So You listen to the audio, you will not understand it. And the access service which is offered, which are subtitles, if you are blind or if you have a reading difficulty, you will not be able to read those subtitles. So what they offer, and some countries offer, are those subtitles read aloud, okay? And this can take different forms. So on the one hand, there are countries in which this is an automatic service with text-to-speech technologies. And on the other hand, sometimes you find that in content which is audio described. So then you have audio description with audio subtitling, right?
Right.
So apart from audio description and audio subtitling, of course, you need to consider the subtitles, right? And we often talk about SDH, subtitles for the deaf and hard of hearing. I'm not so sure, again, just for the sake of conversation, I'm not so sure we should talk about SDH or subtitles for the deaf and hard of hearing, because many people are using those subtitles on a train or
absolutely.
Maybe so, but in any case, that's one access service. And of course, there's also the sign language interpreting, which I'm not very familiar with, to be honest, which I like to put also at the same level as other oral languages interpreting, okay? And apart from that, if it's not a movie, for instance, if it's a theater play, there are also other services that can be planned and that can be offered. You can have touch tours, for instance, in which before the play begins, you get on stage, you can touch the different props, etc. Or even you can have an audio introduction, like an audio track that summarizes what's going to happen. I've seen that in opera, for instance. So there are many services, but one last thing, if I may say that, for instance, these are like the most classical ones. Most recently, there's been also an interest in cognitive accessibility and also in topics related to, for instance, easy language, okay, or a clear communication.
Fantastic.
So there are many ways to integrate this accessibility in the different content. So we've got lots of research and lots of work, which is good.
I was going to say, I mean, it necessarily forces you as a researcher to focus on 1, 2, 3 specific fields at the most, because otherwise it just becomes too broad and too inaccessible.
Indeed, indeed.
But I did like something that you just mentioned about, and this is something that probably experts in the field are very aware of, but how practices are evolving over time, right? I mean, you mentioned SDH or subtitling, simply not because you have a hard of hearing impairment, but because it's a user preference. So some of Paulo Romero's research and the one you've done with colleagues over time shows that we are having a tendency to include all sorts of people with different user needs who used to be on the fringes of accessibility, now being embedded more into the circle and being taken into account simply because of user preferences changing over time. So I'm wondering, I was just seeing this interview with David Orrego Carmona the other day, and he actually, something that crossed my mind too, with regards to this new Netflix show, 1988, I think it is, that is truly multilingual. and then all of a sudden you've got subtitles in English, but you can actually watch the original series in the original languages. So how do you think that's changing the practice of subtitling? How is that going to affect new practices, and how do you see them evolving over time? Because I think everything is changing at a very fast pace.
Everything is changing, and the answer to the question about multilingualism, I don't dare even to answer that at the Universitat of Vic, where they are working on the film, and they've been working on multilingualism for such a long time. But indeed, things are changing, and what we need to do is keep an eye on what's out there. For instance, intralingual re-speaking is what was the norm so far, okay?
Yes.
Now interlingual re-speaking is there. I mean, and a few years ago we were saying
it wasn't
it's too complex, this cannot be done. It's there. Easy language was not there. I've seen simultaneous simplifications, and this is another service. So I think that what you were saying about these user needs, about the personalization, is key in this area, because what we want when we connect to an online streaming platform or whatever is to be able to choose. And in this regard, for instance, what's good is that you have the option, dubbing, subtitling, etc., and you choose what you want or what you need or what you prefer at a certain moment. Okay.
Indeed. Yes. Wow, that's so interesting. We've touched a little bit about technology, speech technologies and voice recognition and bespeaking and what kind of, so moving into technology hardcore now, what kind of software or technology is it mainly powering translation and interpreting mediated accessibility across different media? What's the main technology behind all of this today?
For me, I think that technology is central to accessibility, but I see it at different levels. First of all, you need technology to produce the access services. So when we translate, when we create access services, we are using tools. At least we're using a computer and internet access, and then we can talk about other tools. But there are tools that we are using, digital resources, right? So for the production, we are working on the cloud, most of the people are right now. So there are technologies that we use to produce these access services, but also we need technology to distribute these access services. If we produce them, but they are not distributed, then what's the point of it? And to distribute it, for instance, I'm thinking, imagine a conference, okay? You've got someone producing the subtitles, but how are you sending those subtitles to the audiences? So that's the second thing I think it's important, the distribution. And of course, there you have many more technical issues that I don't know anything about, okay, at the television. And, but there, that needs to be taken care, the formats and all these things. And the third thing I can think of is the consumption. So I am a user, I've got a phone, I've got a laptop, I've got a TV set, but is it accessible, the device? So can I access the menu? Is the menu accessible? So I think there are different layers. As a user, you need to know that the access services exist and they need to inform about that in an accessible way. Then you need a device that is accessible. You need to be able to choose on an accessible menu, and all that is technology. Absolutely. Once you get into there, you need to get the subtitles or the audio description that are distributed and which have been created with technology. So I'm afraid technology is all around us.
It's all over the place, absolutely.
Yes.
So much so that I just had a power cut and you're going to have to film in the dark. But, you know, technology fails when you most need it, even basic ones. So apologies for the power cut that I just had. But hey,
no worries.
All right. Now, in terms of automation, there's a lot of changes going on in the industry right now. How do you see developments in artificial intelligence and machine translation, and how are these developments influencing audiovisual translation, which is your main field, and accessibility?
Yes. I was at Berlin at the Languages and the Media Conference, and automation, machine translation, and so on is really, really a hot topic. There is a strong debate from a professional. The light is playing. Now we see you again, yes. Vanessa. And it's a reality also. Maybe I would refer briefly, I can think of different technologies. So for instance, speech recognition. Speech recognition is a reality. I mentioned before the intralinguistic respeaking, and of course, which needs this speech recognition, but also interlinguistic respeaking. Machine translation or translation memories, again, there is a hot debate there. It's being used in subtitling. Many people oppose that, but it's a reality more and more. I did some experiments with Ana Fernandez a few years ago on machine translation and in audio description. And we found at that moment, and that was before the neural machine translation, so it was the old one, and that post-editing. So just the highlights, okay? I'm not going to get into details about the research, but basically, yes, post-editing was fastest than creating or translating, but that was not really, there was not really a big difference. It was less demanding from a technical and a cognitive point of view when we use keyboard login measures. But when we talk to the people and ask them about their self-reported feelings, it was really bad at that point. But of course, that is also related to the profile of the people who are not trained or are not used to machine translation yet. And now I know that in Antwerp, they are doing research on that field.
Yes, I think so. This extensive research at the moment, well, extensive, but
yes, but in the field of media accessibility, not so much, because we've had subtitling, right?
Yes.
Interlinguistic subtitling, but for instance, in audio description, I think there's not that much research, to be honest. And then another technology which I think is very relevant in media accessibility is TTS, text to speech. So for instance, the persons with sight loss are used to screen readers, are used to artificial voices. So there have been, in this case, more extensive testing on TTS in audio description with quite positive results. I remember Agnieszka Walczak with very positive results in documentaries. We also had some good results, at least in terms of acceptance of TTS. So I think that there can be quite a lot of potential. But there are lots of technologies, if you give me 2 minutes, that I think have potential. We've got a few more, right?
I think, I think those pretty much sum up the whole thing of what's behind the industry, empowering and the industry right now. But perhaps just very quickly in terms of developments also that also technology related naturally have been driven mainly by technology developments. It's in the field of immersive technologies, mixed reality. What can you tell us about mixed reality? How do you see that affecting your work in the future and accessibility?
I think that mixed reality, virtual reality, augmented reality, all these new technologies are more and more present. So we have the headsets, the cardboards. Imagine the Google cardboards, you know, that you have exactly, and you also have this mixed reality, the HoloLens that it overlaps on the real world. But you can also have a room with a projector. I was in a place that there was like a projector and a room with, all the scene around you. We've been doing research. Maybe I can summarize it in a couple of minutes. We did research in the IMAC project. That was a project running from 2018 until 2021, exactly. And we did that research in a team. I would like to highlight Belén Agulló and Anita Fidica, who were the PhD students, now doctors. And this project focused mainly on 360 videos, okay? The ones, for instance, that you can watch on YouTube. And the whole purpose of that project was to understand how we can produce accessible 360 videos using a methodology in which the users were at the center. So we basically did 3 main things. On the one hand, first, we focused on professional tools. So there was a partner that was developing a subtitling editor, an audio description editor, a sign language editor. And what we did was test with professionals who were testing these tools and were improving those tools, okay? And all this is open access, the results and so on. So this links a bit with what I was saying before about the creation, right? So we were looking at the creation. Another thing that we did was look at the player, okay? Because you say, yes, we are gonna create accessible content. Oh yes, we've got this tool that creates accessible subtitles for 360, okay? Do you have a player that can play 360 videos with those subtitles? So we were working on a player and developing the menu, okay? A menu with a voice interaction and a standard menu. And again, with users, we did lots of tests there. And
fantastic.
yes, and the last thing we did in that project was look at the access services. And maybe I can briefly explain subtitles and audio description, if that's fine, Vanessa.
Yes, of course, of course.
So with the subtitles, the thing was, oh, and I keep moving my hands and then it looks really bad. I'll take something so that I don't move. The first thing, yes, I got a pen, but it doesn't do well. Anyway, the first thing we considered was, okay, imagine you are in a 360 video. So all the action is happening all around you. It can happen behind your back, okay? And you are a person with a hearing loss. You cannot hear what's happening. First of all, what you need is a guiding mechanism, something that guides you to where the action is. And there we tested two options. These options came up from focus groups, and then we tested them. We tested an arrow, and we tested like a radar, you know, more video game-like. Arrow one. People, generally speaking, prefer the simplest option, and the arrow, which evolved with the project, was the selected guiding mechanism. But we also had to discuss, we had to decide on the positioning. So where do you put the subtitles in a 360 videos? So what we did is test subtitles that are always visible, okay? So whenever you look, you have them. Or subtitles that are fixed to the speaker. So the speaker is behind me, the subtitles are there. The arrow takes me there, and then I see the subtitles. And in this case, it was clear that the always visible one, okay? And then we did another test, which was this always visible, that you can actually see it all the time, compared to one thing that BBC, New York Times have been doing, which is put the same subtitle every 120 degrees. So you have the subtitle at different points. Again, what we did for the subtitles, the always visible, were the preferred. But there we talked about preferences and immersion. Okay, so we tested for preferences and immersion.
That's fantastic. If I might just quickly interrupt you.
Yes,
before
sure, because I keep talking.
Yeah, no, it's just you've actually answered my next two questions that I had about research, which were basically what are successful projects that you've worked on in the field, and how does your research help improve accessibility? In other words, what made them effective? And what I think you've managed to show successfully is that you embed and implement and involve users. And that's the kind of research that I think we need more at large, not just in audiovisual translation, but in the discipline perception studies. Would you say that's the core of your work in the field, perception studies in audiovisual translation and accessibility?
I think what you just said, you know, this user-centric approach to research is at the core of what we do at Transmedia Catalonia. So and also I would say that we are trying to keep an eye on where the technology is taking us. So for instance, when we moved from analog to digital, we had a project on digital television led by Pilar Orero, DTV for All. When we moved from digital to immersive, or when immersive was added, we had the IMAC project. Now there is also this blockchain technology, right? So we have a project, we are involved in a project on blockchain also. It's not only accessibility, but we try to put accessibility there. So I would say the user-centric, this keeping an eye on technology and the teamwork is maybe one of the features of our work. And also trying to keep an eye on what can be funded now at European level, etc.
Oh my God, you just stole my next question.
Did you? Did I?
You just did. You just did. It was about funding. But it is actually about funding, because I'm very well aware that you're very successful at Transmedia Catalonia at attracting substantial amount of funds from the European Union mostly. what would you advise a young researcher or a young team of researchers wanting to track funds? What's your main piece of advice to junior or even
Yes.
senior or and above to attract large amount of money?
The first thing I want to say is that this would not be possible with some people in our team. For instance, Pilar Orero is really strong in submitting proposals. But I also want to say that a second thing, which is that you are very kind to say that we are successful, and for the time being we are, but you should know, or you cannot even imagine the number of projects that we do not get.
Okay.
I would say that maybe we are at a 20% or rate of, or 30%. I have not calculated that, but we submit lots and lots of projects at every single call in Europe. We submit projects as partners at least. Okay. Then for what I've learned in this process, even in Europe, or just now this week, I got a provisional resolution for a knowledge transfer network. Okay, so I'm really, yesterday it came in.
Congratulations.
So and when I was thinking, what do we do to have higher chances in that? I think it's reading the call very carefully. The call tells us what they want, and sometimes we want to force what we like into that.
I know. you want to feed
they
in
won't
the data.
And they won't fund something just because we think it's relevant or just because we like it. There is always an agenda, I think, on what will be funded, at least at European level. There is a call. So I take a lot of time reading the call and having a look at the evaluation criteria to make sure we meet them. A good team is also important. And of course, good methodology structure, but that comes without saying.
Yes, because part of that funding too, I suppose, involves working with a large network of stakeholders, content creators, translators, accessibility experts. So how do you work with all of them to ensure the best outcome for the end user? What would you say is the key criterion?
That's a tricky question. Every project is different, and our role in each project is also different. So it's not the same if you are leading than if you are a partner, or if you are leading a work package, or if you are not leading any of that. So your role is different, but I think we have to be aware of all the of the differences, but also the richness of each of the partners, and make the most of it. And if you are leading, very often try to be, know where to compromise, how to deal with people, and make sure the project goes forwards.
Goes ahead. Okay, very good. I'm very conscious of time, Anna. So I think that's all from me today. But before I let you go entirely, I wanted to ask with you, are you up for a little experiment? This tiny short experiment that involves asking one of the language models that is invoked today, the Chat GPT, which we know it's going to become, I think, the next search tool of the future. But do you feel like we ask a machine what an expert in your field should be asked? And I'm saying this because this came part of a conversation with some of my former fellow students when I was a student in Madrid, and then Marina Sanchez Toron actually was playing with the tool and said, well, maybe you can ask the tool what to ask Anna Matamala. And I said, well, that's not a bad idea. So let me share the screen and let's just get one question from that tool and see, are you able to see the interface? The chat?
Yes, I can see.
Okay, all right. So I'm just going to, you can see, okay. So let me just get my computer here and let me type. For instance, what can you ask an expert in media accessibility and, oops, got a typo there, and translation. And then whatever they think the tool lists, a potential list of questions. Maybe we can scroll through them and see which one you would like to answer, okay? Pretty smart. I'm very impressed with this tool. Obviously, it's not magic, but I think it's got huge implications for search, as I said, for language learning.
Wow.
I know. Okay, there you go. So we've got a list of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 questions. If you don't like them, we can actually go and say, try again.
No, no, I can't.
All right. So maybe you can pick one that we haven't discussed yet, or
yes, because I think that some of them we have discussed, right?
Best practices, maybe we haven't talked about standards and practices.
Best practices. I think that yes, maybe I can talk about that because I've been involved a bit in standardization at ISO and the Spanish Standard Agency. So, of course, each company or some companies have best practices, have recommendations. But I think what's really relevant is that we also have ISO international standards, for instance. I was involved in the standard on audio subtitles, and now I'm finalizing co-editing a standard on easy language. And it's so rich because you have people from different places, right, collaborating and making sure that makes sense internationally, because sometimes we have a very Western-centric or Eurocentric approach to all these topics. So it's good to broaden our minds in a way.
And,
I don't know if Chad will accept this, this reply, but that's what I came up with.
I'll ask you about back to humans now. Thank you very much.
Can you ask her or him or it a question?
Sure.
Because I'm involved in a project in which we are co-creating 360 videos. Can you ask, how would you co-create accessible 360 degrees videos? That's a tricky one. I mean, this project.
Hold on, because I don't have my.
Sorry, if we have time.
No,
right?
it's all right. Yeah, while members of the audience, please, you're all welcome now to put your questions in the chat. I'm pretty sure you have been doing so, but take a few minutes to think and get your questions in. So how would you co-create
360 degrees? Videos.
Oh my God, I don't have the degree thing. Okay.
Never mind, because this is what we are doing in the Mediaverse project.
For accessibility?
How do you create, how would you create 300 degrees? Yeah, why not? For accessibility. Oh, yes.
Well, make sure you acknowledge
that's a tricky
authorship. That's a tricky one. Let's see what the machine says. Oh my God, you're going to have to write a research proposal now based on the tips. Does any of that make sense to you so far?
It's not bad, is it? Come on, it's identify the issues, develop a plan involving people. So it's quite amazing. Look, they even refer to methodologies, focus groups or user testing. It refers to technology. Okay, and testing and validating. You should interview the artificial intelligence rather than me.
But for now, we rather stick to you, Anna. Okay, so let's have a look. Thanks for that. That was very informative. I think members of the audience might want to interact with you a little bit.
Sure.
And I could see that Richard has been inviting questions so far. So Montserrat, who is one of our lovely students at WIG, says she has no questions at the moment, but she didn't know about subtitles. Nobody has questions.
If not, Vanessa, I can tell you about the latest projects we are doing. I mean, up to you.
Yes, if I think we've got maybe 4 more minutes, because otherwise people might want to go home and have dinner or be across different time zones. But yes, since I can't seem to find any questions. If I'm missing any, please, my co-hosts might just let me know about them. But otherwise, go ahead, Anna, because that was one of the pending questions.
If you give me 2 minutes per project, 2.5, I'll tell you about 2 projects in which there is this immersive accessibility component. So I was telling you about the iMac and what we did. And now in Traction, our colleague Marta Brescia is trying to take this forward. And we did preferences, I told you. We did what people like. We did also immersion, self-reported immersion. Marta, with the team, is beginning to work on eye tracking in 360 videos. So keep an eye on the papers that Marta will be writing on that, because that adds another layer of information. And then I need to tell you about one of my favorite projects this year. This will be short. We are in this project, the Mediaverse project, and we've been doing some tests, co-creating 360 videos. Always with a social or with an educational purpose. So for instance, we've collaborated with a university of infirmary, nursery, and they've gone to all people's home and they've co-created with the old people 360 videos of places that remind them of their, when they were young. And we did a very, very interesting thing, which was to raise awareness about accessibility with young children. So as part of the Chroma program, we had this like an extracurricular activity with children. Beautiful. They co-created a video, a very nice video of their school, and then they added layers of accessibility. And they came to the university, they presented the video, they were there, the children talking about audio description, subtitling, and they were 11 years old, 12 years old. So that was a really, really nice project to raise awareness.
And with true social impact as well, as I would say. Yes. So outside, the economic side of things and the instrumentalist function. Okay, I think we've got a couple of questions now. Yes. And one is, again, Montserrat is interested in finding out whether subtitles interfere with original audio, and if so, in what way, I would add.
Yes, I put an example that will explain this very well, I think. Audio subtitles, the effect is very similar to a voiceover. So when we're watching a documentary, we often hear the original in the background, and then we hear the voiceover translation. Audio subtitles are similar, and I see that Montserrat says, okay, so
you answered the question. Yes. And then Richard Sampson seems to be very, very interested about the European Accessibility Directive. I think I've seen something in the chat before.
There actually, it's key. There have been 3 pieces of legislation which are really, really important and that will have an impact in the coming years. One is the European Accessibility Act, okay? And that needs to be transposed into the different countries. And not everybody has done it yet. The second thing is the revision of the Audiovisual Media Services Directive. This also was done recently. And finally, there was the Web Accessibility Act. So I think that in terms of legislation at European level, this is the best we could achieve. Now it's up to the different countries to transpose and implement those legislations. So I hope to see a big change there. And also lots of opportunities for our students.
Indeed, which is actually also aligned with one of the questions that I decided to leave out, but maybe it's a good opportunity for someone who wants to join the field and would like to do a PhD with you. What kind of topics would you suggest?
What kind of topics? With me, you mean? Or with generally speaking?
I think with you, because as bringing in your expertise, and also in general, of course, I know maybe tied to latest trends or needs in the field.
Yes, I think that I think that in my case, when I choose PhD students and so on, very often I try to link the research they will be doing to projects, because it's an opportunity for them to interact with other researchers. Then you have funding to go to conferences. So very often we try to find something that interests the PhD students and which is aligned with current research. In my case, I do lots of reception research these days, but I've also moved into qualitative research, focus groups, interviews, and so on. And lately, I mean, I think that my interest has been mainly on audio description, audio subtitling, all these oral modes. And lately I have a very strong interest in easy language. But there are many things that can be researched,
Yes.
I think.
Very, very good. As you know, cognitive accessibility is a field that attracts my attention a lot. And
Yes.
I think there's a lot to be done in that field, because cognitive accessibility is wider than anyone would imagine. So I think
and not easy to get into.
No,
not easy at all.
Not easy at all. You're right. But I do see a lot of overlap, for instance, with plain language uses and even pre-editing or machine translation. So I think we do have to exploit the overlaps between the two a bit more in our field, because we've got a large body of research, at least.
Actually, what we like to talk about is this continuum, no, of easy to understand languages, from the easy to the plain, and there are many possibilities,
many varieties.
Yes.
Very good. Okay, I think we have one last question, or maybe if anyone else, but one more because I'm looking at the time. Floriane is asking about the economic side of things. She's wondering how this is all possible, all this kind of progress, and whether it's realistic to think that new technologies will make audiovisual media accessible, basically.
Florian, I know you, and this is a very nasty question. Because anything related to economy and to the future, I don't know anything about. I am really sorry. I hope that technology will help us, but will it? No, I see that. I know it's not meant to be, Floriana. I don't understand. I don't have knowledge about the dynamics of all the economics.
Yeah, look, Anna, whenever you're asked a question about the future, the best answer is that the best way to predict the future is to invent it. So we're inventing it as it is right now. And that was said by somebody in the tech industry many years ago. I can't remember who the quote is.
Then that's my reply. You add it. The future, we invent it.
Yes, we're inventing it right now. We can't predict it, but we are inventing it as we speak. Okay, well, I think that's probably it from the audience of the members too. So we're going to draw the conversation to an end now. It was a pleasure having you, Anna. Thank you so much for donating your time. I know you're a very busy woman and researcher. So thanks for making the time to be with us today. And we wish you all the best for your future endeavors as a researcher and as a teacher in the field. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much to you for organizing this, for leading this. Thank you to the university, and thank you to all the people who at almost 7:30 are still here. I really appreciate it. Thank you very much.
No, sorry, I was mute. Thank you, Anna. Thank you, Vanessa, for this very, very interesting conversation. A bit scary what Vanessa on that chat that she showed us is able to do, but anyway. Thank you, Anna. I know Anna since forever. I never stop learning from her. And what else? Thank you, Richard, for being there, controlling that everything goes okay. And again, to all of you who have joined us and still be there. One last thing, I remind you that the next talk will take place on January the 19th between George Bastan and Kenneth Manzano, and they will talk about the history of translation. And I think that's all. See you next time, and happy holidays.